Chinese manufacturing may see further contraction in August. This news comes on the release of the HSBC and Markit Economics Purchasing Managers Index today. This index shows falling orders and new export business declines. I'm joined down the line by Rob Dobson, Senior Economist at Markit Economics, to find out what this news will mean for China's economy. Mr. Dobson, thank you for joining me. Firstly, what does this latest press release show for China's manufacturing sector?
Well, at the headline level, what it's showing is that business conditions in the China manufacturing sector are continuing to deteriorate. The PMI registered its second lowest reading since March 2009. And there was also a renewed drop in manufacturing production as well, which again is signalling that there is some weakness in the China manufacturing sector. But also, probably just as critical, is that we're seeing it hitting levels of employment, and also levels of exports are starting to fall. Indeed, exports fell at the sharpest rate since March 2009. So again, this is signalling that there's quite a lot of weakness there for Chinese manufacturers.
You mentioned exports there. China's export growth collapsed to 1% in July. Is this due mainly to consumers being from the Eurozone and reducing demand, or are there other reasons?
I'd say that the whole consumer picture in the Eurozone would be one of the predominant reasons behind that slump in export demand. But there is a secondary factor which has become much more important, well, it's become important in recent months as well, and that is that the global economy in general is showing signs of slowing down. And of course, with China being a big exporter, trade links with many of the major world economies, particularly in the developed world where economic conditions have been very muted for a very long time now. That's obviously going to hit China's export growth currently, but it'll also continue to hit it going forward unless those economic difficulties are resolved.
Let's go on to looking more closely at production. What does this release show for China's production sector?
Again, it's showing that China's been hit by not just deteriorating domestic market conditions, but also by the broader global economic slowdown, and that will hit levels of output across all of the production sectors and result in a generally weaker rate of growth for China GDP going ahead.
I see. And what can Beijing do to lift infrastructure investment in both the short and the long term?
I think in the short term, I think the main way they could do that is to continue to fund the infrastructure investment which they've been continuing to do ever since the onset of the global financial crisis and through the recovery phase and into the softer patch we're seeing now. I think longer term, I think the critical thing for China's government to consider is ensuring that when they actually increase and lift this infrastructure investment, what they do is they target it towards areas which will be most productive for China's long-term growth. For example, improving road, rail, air communications, and also investing in things such as telecommunications, broadband and the like, will enable China to ensure that it maintains a competitive edge going forward and move up the value chain in terms of what services and what products it offers to the global economy.
Lastly, do you predict we will see similar movements when the final PMI data is released next week?
I think what we generally see between flash and final is that there's not a large movement between what we see in the flash PMIs and what we see in the final. So what we're likely to see from those figures is the weakness that we've seen from these figures be reflected in those. So it will largely confirm this picture of deteriorating conditions in China manufacturing.
Thank you, Mr. Dobson, for joining me. If you would like to give your opinion on any of the topics mentioned on Dukas Copy TV, you can go to our website and join in with any of our live daily webinars. Take care.